I'm Davy, and I'm awesome. And welcome to Davy's Awesome Movies, where I reveal the styles of movies that I love, the alternative, B-rated, cult-style flicks. And this week, we're going to get into the third installment of the Nightmare on Elm Street series, one that most fans hold as the best in the series. This one was made in 1987, and it was written and directed by Chuck Russell, and co-written by the creator Wes Craven, Bruce Wagner, and Frank Darabont, and of course produced by Robert Shea. Made by New Line Cinema, Heron Communications, and Smart Egg Pictures. And of course distributed by New Line Cinema. Ladies and gentlemen, A Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors. The movie opens with our lead, Kristen, doing some papier-mâché and very loudly listening to the closing theme of NWA Power.
Hello. Don't hide, Mommy. What are you still doing up? It's past 1.
Kristen is played by Patricia Arquette. This was her film debut. And she is trying very hard not to go to sleep.
I'm still having those awful dreams.
What dreams might those be, considering this is the only film in the franchise not to open with a dream sequence? But her mom doesn't care. She's dismissive. She's got a guest.
And you don't want to keep him waiting.
That's right. I don't.
Good mom. Kristen starts dreaming of Nancy's old house and a bunch of kids playing in front of it, and a little girl who takes her to a basement.
Freddy's home.
That's creepy. Kristen picks up the little girl and starts running until she gets trapped in chocolate pudding! Or is that tar? Is that supposed to be tar or chocolate pudding? You know, it's probably tar. Probably. But to be fair, it being chocolate pudding wouldn't be that far off. In the first film, Nancy started running up the stairs that turned into marshmallow fluff. Kristen runs until she gets into a room full of a bunch of kids that are just hanging around. You know, like a bunch of lazy good-for-nothings. But then, the little girl that she's holding is saying she wants to be put down. Yet somehow that's not as creepy as earlier. What exactly is it about little kids that is so creepy?
Whatever do you mean, Father?
And I gotta live with that one. This wakes up Kristen. She gets up and decides to go to the bathroom. You know, she might still be asleep. Just then, her mom walks in. Oh, I see. Someone just wants a little attention. So Kristen's mom takes her to a mental hospital.
This is ridiculous. I know my own daughter. She's just trying to get some attention, that's all, and I'm...
Okay, when I say it, I'm a character who's pretending to be clueless. When you say it, you're just a crappy mom. Kristen is freaking out because they're trying to give her a sedative, and she does not want to go to sleep. Freaking out to the point that she grabs a scalpel, and even Morpheus can't get a hold of her. Yes, Lawrence Fishburne is in this movie. He's casted as Larry Fishburne, but we know it's Lawrence. He plays Max. Kristen starts doing the Freddy rhyme, all the way from 1, 2, Freddy's coming for you, to 9, 10.
Never sleep again.
It's Nancy. Heather Langenkamp returns to this movie to play Nancy, and Nancy is the new intern at this hospital. Dr. Neil Gordon tells Nancy all about the kids that are in this hospital sharing a group delusion, having the exact same dreams about the exact same guy. As if this is possible. The odds of even 2 people having the exact same delusion are like 1 in those ridiculous numbers you hear about. The fact that there's a group of them should alarm people, but it doesn't. The only thing that's alarming them is that these kids are tired and they don't want to go to sleep. Ever. Now, at this point, you may be asking yourself from earlier, what kind of person can actually be creepier than a child? None. Later that night, as hard as she tried not to, Kristen falls asleep. And she's back at Nancy's old house. Or, judging by the timelines, a year ago it was Jesse's house. You know what? Never mind, because they're actually just pretending that that movie never happened. Thank God. While Kristen is walking around, she encounters a graboid. It's Freddy. It's Freddy Snack. And again, this movie is before there was such a thing as CGI. So there's an art to it, makes you wonder, how did they do this? They built the thing, painted it green, and then filmed this backwards. In her dream, Kristen calls out to Nancy. And by calling out to her, Nancy falls asleep and ends up in her dream.
Oh my God.
He remembers me. After 3 whole years. Oh wait, the first movie takes place earlier. 6 whole years! Kristen makes herself wake up, which in turn makes Nancy wake up. And in the morning, when Nancy sees her at the hospital, Kristen tells Nancy that pulling people into her dreams is something she's been able to do since she was a little girl. She used to do it to her dad when she was having bad dreams.
Man of my dreams. He's real, isn't he?
If not, this is a hell of a coincidence. In group therapy, a kid named Philip makes a really good point.
The fact that we all dreamt about this guy before we ever met doesn't seem to impress anybody.
Thank you! That night, Nancy's getting to know Neil.
My mother passed away. She died in her sleep.
Well, that's one way to say that she was burned to death by a guy who was on fire that I'd pulled out of my dreams. Or that she turned into a blow-up doll and got pulled through a window. They never actually confirm which one of those was actually Nancy's mother's death. Nancy also recommends a drug that she is taking that makes it to where she doesn't dream when she sleeps. And she's trying to get Neil to prescribe it to the kids.
I'm sorry, Nancy. The answer is no.
Although someday, that's exactly what they will do. We'll get there. That night, we get to our first death in the movie. The guy who made that very valid point at group, Philip, falls asleep, and Freddy makes a marionette doll out of him by ripping out his tendons. Everyone else thinks he's just sleepwalking. And Freddy, by his tendons, takes him all the way to the top of a tower. They can't wake him. You know, it sucks that Philip had to die. But in my opinion, hands down, the best death of the series. The next day at group, Dr. Sims, of course, is refusing to believe that he was killed by the guy that they've all been dreaming about, but rather that he committed suicide. So Dr. Neal decides, just to be safe, let's go ahead and prescribe that dream suppressant.
Do you think we can get the hypnosil by tomorrow?
Even if they could get it by tomorrow, it wasn't quick enough, because that night, Jennifer is trying to stay awake by watching some TV. That's what happens when nothing's good on. You fall asleep. Nowadays, it's not as difficult to find something good. There's plenty of good stuff on all these streaming services and YouTube. But back then, you had to watch whatever crap was on while it was on.
Welcome to prime time, bitch!
Okay, I gotta say it. At least 2 out of the top 5 deaths in the entire Nightmare on Elm Street series are in this one movie. Max walks in. And this, kids, is why your parents told you not to sit too close to the television. At the funeral the next day, Neil is talking to that creepy nun he saw.
The unquiet spirit must be laid to rest.
But when Nancy comes to talk to Neil...
I was just talking to...
To who?
Nancy asks Neil to trust her as she talks to the group.
I know who's trying to kill you.
She tells them the story of Freddy Krueger. But by this movie we already know, so let's just skip that. And she also tells them that Kristen is the key to defeating Freddy, as she can pull people into her dreams. So, they try a group hypnosis to get them all to sleep, so they can test this theory. But it doesn't work. And Joey, the mute, sees a little cougar, decides to go off and see what that's about. But as it turns out...
If it doesn't work, I promise I'll...
It actually did work. They're all together in one dream. They all start to see who they are in their own dreams.
In my dreams, I'm beautiful and bad.
Bad? Okay. Beautiful? I don't think the mohawk really works for you. Don't get me wrong. In most cases, Jennifer Rubin is very, very attractive, but not with that mohawk. This was her first movie, too. Joey is still off somewhere else dreaming about his little filly. Hello, nurse.
What's wrong, Joey? Feeling tongue-tied?
Hey! I'll do the bad puns around here, thank you! Dr. Sims rushes in and wakes everyone up, except for Joey. He's not dead, he's in a coma. Later, the chief of staff of the hospital, Dr. Carver, is blaming Neil for all of this.
In the last 4 days, we've had 2 suicides, and now that young man is in a coma.
You're really going to chalk Jennifer up to being a suicide? It's bad enough that you guys are denying the fact that it's impossible that these guys could have the exact same delusions. But Jennifer was ridiculously shorter than that television. There was no stool around or nothing. So you really think she was able to leap that high up just to smash her face into a television? Of course, because of this, Neil and Nancy are fired. While walking to his car, Neil encounters that nun from earlier. She tells him how the mental hospital used to be a mental prison, keeping the most insane maniacs and killers in that little prison, and how there was a woman that used to work there who accidentally got locked in with the inmates over a holiday weekend. As if there would be no guards around just because it's a holiday. Like, oh, it's a holiday, guys, you fend for yourselves. Not how it works. But of course, because she was locked in with a bunch of maniacs, she was sexually assaulted a lot and nearly killed, and even made to be pregnant. Her name was Amanda Kruger, Freddy's mom.
The bastard son of 100 maniacs.
So apparently Freddy never had a chance. The nun tells Neil how to kill Freddy.
You must find the remains and bury him in hallowed ground.
Find his remains and bury him. He was burned to death over 20 years ago. That should be a cinch. Neil tells this to Nancy, and she happens to know the one man who would know where Freddy's remains are.
Hi, Daddy.
John Saxon, reprising his role as Lieutenant Thompson. Of course, Lieutenant Thompson is still denying that Freddy Krueger was behind any of this. Just then, Nancy and Neil get word that Kristen has been sedated and put in a padded room. So Nancy decides she's going to go to the hospital and get to Kristen. Neil, on the other hand...
You and I are going on a little scavenger hunt.
Ask nicely. That's Roper you're talking to, buddy. Nancy can't get to Kristen, of course. She's locked in a padded room, and Nancy doesn't have any clearance. She doesn't work there no more. So what she does is she goes and gathers the group, and they do the group hypnosis thing so they can all meet together in Dreamland. It worked! But a little too well, because now they're separated. So let's go to Taryn first.
Let's get high.
No, Taryn! Say no to drugs! Man, the DARE program was really stepping up their game. Now to Will.
In the name of Lorik, Prince of Elves, demon be gone!
Okay, now that we've gotten the drug message out of the way, somebody needs to sit down and go watch Mazes and Monsters.
I don't believe in fairy tales.
Yeah, it turns out even though he can pretend he's a wizard in his dream, it doesn't really affect Freddy. Lieutenant Thompson takes Neil to a junkyard, where it turns out the remains of Freddy were hidden in a junked car. It's not really a good hiding place. People go in there to get parts.
You're about to attend a funeral. One that's long overdue.
Kristen, Kincaid, and Nancy all meet back up together, and they find... Yeah, him. I was getting there. Rude. They save Joey while fighting off Freddy. While fighting Freddy, Nancy mentions that Freddy is a lot stronger than he was before. Freddy tells them why.
The souls of the children give me strength.
And this was the first movie that they actually mentioned that Freddy keeps their souls. Back to the junkyard, they go to bury Freddy's bones. Klaatu Barata Niktu. Yes, you have to say every little syllable. Lieutenant Thompson to the rescue! Maybe not! Back in the dream world, the kids and Nancy are not able to fight off Freddy no matter how hard they try. So it's up to the mute, Joey! Whoa! Seriously though, I'm glad you're talking now, but why did nobody else ever think to tell Freddy no?
It's over!
Why did you say that? You never ever say it's over in a horror movie, because if you say that, it means it's not over.
Die.
I gotta say, after everything she survived in the first and this movie, that's a little lackluster of a death. But she hangs in there long enough to save Kristen. She's Nancy. This also gives Neil a chance to get Freddy's bones into that grave and hollow them.
Ashes to ashes.
And thanks to this, Freddy is defeated, buried, and resting. I don't really want to say in peace, because come on, let's hope not.
I'm gonna dream you into a beautiful dream.
Won't help now. At the funeral, Neil sees the nun.
You were his mother.
Duh! Yeah, I think at this point we figured that was Amanda Kruger. And that's that! Freddy is defeated. This is over. Wes Craven set out to make this the final installment into the Nightmare on Elm Street series. Of course it wasn't. So there you have it. That's A Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors. This movie had plenty of success, as it had a $4.6 million budget and grossed over $44.8 million in the box office. More than the last movie had done, but not as much as the first. Second movie might have been better had Wes Craven been a part of the writing team, but he didn't want to write in it because he didn't want this to become a series. How'd that work out? However, when he agreed to write this script, his original idea for it, the story would be set in the real world where the actors were getting ready to make a sequel and Freddy is able to enter the real world and start killing them. They, of course, said no to this idea. They didn't want to go that route. But eventually it would happen. We'll get there. Some of the actors even tried to get on the writing game, as John Saxon himself wrote a prequel to the original movie. In that, it would have shown that Freddy was actually innocent of the crimes that he was accused of doing that the parents killed him for, and that not only would he have been forced to admit to those crimes, but would have admitted to crimes done by the Manson family. I'm kind of glad they didn't go that route. Robert Englund actually even wrote a script where instead of going after those kids, the protagonist would have actually been Tina Gray's older sister. And he also would have claimed 1428 Elm Street as his own home, setting up booby traps and stuff like Nancy had done to him. They didn't end up using the script for the sequel, but a lot of the script ended up getting used as the pilot for the Nightmare on Elm Street series. However, I'm glad that the writing came out the way it was. I'm glad that this movie got made the way it was, because a lot of people hold this as being the best in the series. I gotta agree. This is my favorite of the Nightmare on Elm Street movies. After this, a couple are good, a couple are bad. But then again, that's kind of held to interpretation, because some people think all the rest of the movies are bad, some think that all the rest of them are good, so it just kind of goes back and forth. The only two that are really clear is most fans do not like the second one, and pretty much all fans love the third. Not only was this movie the film debut of Patricia Arquette, but Robert Englund had talked about in interviews, he knew from the start that she was going to be a very big star. He even said that there were some of the male castmates constantly coming up to him asking him if they think they had a chance with Patricia Arquette. Not to mention, again, in the movie, the special effects are amazing considering the fact that they didn't have a really big budget, as $4 million is really not a lot of money to do a horror film properly. And because of this, they did have to sacrifice some things that they just couldn't do. For example, in the original script, one of the Dream Warriors, during the segment where they're figuring out what they're going to be to fight Freddy, like Kincaid being super strong and the kid being a wizard, there was supposed to be one of the kids makes himself into like a Transformer type character. But there was just really no way they were going to be able to do that. That would have cost way more than they had. However, it is always incredible to me when they can do such a good movie with such limited means, and they really did. In the Nightmare on Elm Street series, this to me is a great movie. And not only am I happy with this movie overall, I'm just happy that it continues the story from the first movie. One of the things that disappointed me about the second movie so much was that it went way off in its own direction. This one to me should have been the second one because it felt like a real sequel to the first movie, while the second movie kind of felt like a spin-off. And not a very good one. So based on that, I do highly recommend you check out A Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors. It's really good. So there you have it. That's my movie review this week. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and if you did, make sure to hit like, hit subscribe, hit that little bell so you get notifications for when I post new videos, and leave a comment. Tell me what you thought of A Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors. Tell me which of the Nightmare on Elm Street movies was your favorite. Love you guys.